Ok, donc bonjour, bienvenue. Aujourd'hui, c'est le mardi 16 mars. Donc les objectifs, voilà. On va commencer avec un échauffement et puis on va revoir les expressions qui déclenchent le passé composé. Les expressions qui déclenchent. Donc voilà. Et puis on va voir un texte, le lièvre et la tortue. Il s'agit d'un texte d'image, ce n'est pas un texte écrit. Et puis, je vais vous parler un peu de la fin du semestre, de la fin de quarter 3, car on s'y approche, quoi. On s'en approche. OK, donc pour l'échauffement, qu'est-ce que tu as fait ce week-end? Qu'est-ce que tu as fait ce week-end? Donc, ce week-end, j'ai... donc, qu'est-ce que tu as fait ce week-end? Donc, moi, ce week-end, j'ai fait du sport. Hier, j'ai travaillé. Dimanche, j'ai préparé le dîner. Samedi, j'ai joué aux jeux vidéo. Ok, bien. Oui, donc ce week-end, qu'est-ce que tu as fait? Ok. Et donc, nous avons ces phrases, nous avons ces expressions pour parler du passé. Donc, ce week-end, aujourd'hui, c'est mardi. Aujourd'hui, nous sommes mardi. Today is Tuesday. So if we're talking about the weekend, we're talking about ce weekend, c'est le week-end passé. It's kind of understood, right? We're in the start of the week. So if you're asking, what did you do this weekend? We're thinking in the past, right? Ce week-end, j'ai joué aux jeux vidéo, j'ai étudié. Super. Super. OK. Ce week-end, j'ai couru. All right, we're getting some late answers in the chat. All right. Better late than never. J'ai couru. J'ai couru. I ran. J'ai couru. J'ai étudié. Super. OK. OK. Et pendant le week-end, je vous ai demandé de terminer une de ces phrases. So I asked you all to finish one of these sentences for the weekend. So which one did you choose and how did you end it? So go ahead and put it in the chat. So this weekend, I asked you, termine une de ces phrases. Go ahead and finish one of these sentences. All right, these are all different situations, but they all ask you to use the passé composé. So go ahead and plug it in the chat for me. Bien. Donc, je vous ai demandé de terminer une de ces phrases. It sounds like we'll have to come back to this tomorrow. All right. So think about some answers. And we've got les expressions. So some examples. Avant la pandémie, ma mère est allée au Japon. Avant la pandémie, nous avons étudié au lycée. Nous étions au lycée. Okay. L'été dernier, Madame Panzel a fait un pique-nique. L'été dernier, elles ont nagé au lac. Je ne sais pas. Okay. Hier, tu as lu un texte en français. Hier, vous avez joué aux jeux vidéo. Je ne sais pas. Hier, vous avez mangé un sandwich. Il y a un an, nous avons voyagé en avion. Okay, so we have all these expressions, right, in French, and I'm using these expressions for a reason, right? Okay, we got another answer in the chat. Excellent. L'été dernier, j'ai voyagé dans le North Dakota, le Dakota du Nord. Super. Okay, and why am I using these expressions? Why am I drawing your attention to these ones in particular? When we're talking about before the pandemic, or more specifically, like in particular, il y a un an, 1 year ago, yesterday, last summer, what kind of stuff are you going to be talking about? So we've got ideas of, I took a trip, I traveled, I went to Chicago. right? Let's see some of the other answers I offered you. You started studying French. You had a sandwich for lunch. You read a text in French. Okay, so if I pick these expressions, it's because they give you, they trigger the passé composé, déclenche le passé composé, they trigger the passé composé because it's very specifically something that happened in the past. All right, and not just something that happened in the past, but something that started and ended in the past, right? When you think about eating a sandwich, it's something that you do and it's just boom, it's done. You start eating the sandwich, you end eating the sandwich, boom, right? It doesn't take a week to eat a sandwich. That'd be kind of weird, right? So these are going to be really, they call them punctual, right? Punctual. You may know the word punctual for like being on time, but in this sense, punctual means like they're very discrete. They have a specific time that they happen in the past. And I'm telling you all this because it'll help you in the future with other tenses in French, other past tenses, okay? So with the passé composé, maybe just put yes or no in the chat. Yes or no. In the passé composé, are we talking about habits or things that we did often in the past? Yes or no? No, okay? We're not talking about habits with the passé composé. We're not talking about habits. Habits are something that you did for a long time, for a while, and so they're not going to be in the passé composé. So we're not going to be talking about habits in the passé composé. We're not going to be talking about describing the weather or anything else in the passé composé. We're going to use a different tense for that. The passé composé is really going to be specific actions that you did. So we flew to Japan, right? That's a specific thing that happened, and it started and ended in the past for sure. Okay. And so if I'm underlining these expressions, if I'm repeating them to you and asking you to start thinking about them in French, it's because they are so clearly going to trigger the passé composé. Okay. And again, I'm not asking you to necessarily memorize this. I just want you to get familiar with them and start kind of getting an understanding for, okay, the passé composé, that's a specific thing that started and ended in the past. All right. And so it can help us tell a story. So let's go ahead and look at Le Lièvre et la Tortue. So please go ahead and open up your activity packet for Unit 4. It's going to look like this. Why don't you give me a party popper if you have your unit packet open? Cool. All right. Cool. All right. So in the unit packet, I'm on slide 9. Okay. Raconter une histoire. And I tried here to use examples that you might be familiar with, right? Maybe it worked, maybe it didn't. I don't know. I don't know if you know about Hua Mulan and Obi-Wan Kenobi, okay? But when we're telling a story, it generally takes place in the past tense, right? We don't often tell stories in the future. Maybe in science fiction or something, I don't know. But generally it's going to be in the past tense. Timing is really important in a story, right? Oftentimes a story can be defined by what happens when, right? What happens when? So for example, it matters that Luke Skywalker meets Obi-Wan Kenobi before he meets Darth Vader, right? Because Obi-Wan Kenobi kind of trains him in the Force and teaches him the way of the Force instead of the way of the dark side, right? If Luke Skywalker met Darth Vader before Obi-Wan Kenobi, maybe he would have been like, okay, that's my dad. I'm gonna learn, spoiler alert from the 70s. That's my dad, and I'll learn to follow in the way of the dark side, right? So that would have completely changed the story if he met Darth Vader before Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then it also matters that Fa Mulan earns the respect of her peers before they discover she's a girl, right? And so in Mulan, you may know it from Disney. It's an ancient Chinese legend, right? She pretends she wears the clothing of a boy to be part of the army to serve for her family, right, on behalf of her family. And it matters that she earns the respect of her peers before they learn she's a girl, because then they're like, okay, well, you're too valuable to us. We can't lose you as part of our group because you're awesome. And they couldn't see that if they just knew she was a girl right away. They would say, no, you can't be part of it. But then, so the story matters. The structure of the story matters. So I'm going to ask you to do an activity where you're identifying that. So on the following slide, there's a series of images telling the story of the tortoise and the hare. You might know this story. I picked it because I hope that most of you know it very well, or at least a little bit. If you don't know the story at all, you'll want to click on this and read it a little bit. All right, this is in English. It's just a quick story. And if you haven't read it before, if you're not familiar with it, go ahead and take a look at it before starting this activity. And then once you've reread it, or if you already know it really, really well, you're going to look at this slide, slide 11, and you're going to take the images and you're going to move them so that they're in the right order, right? So these are pictures that are telling the story, and they're all out of order. They're all out of order. So for the next few minutes, what we're going to be doing is I'm going to ask you to go ahead and work on your packet and put the images in the right order. So you should just be able to tap on the image and drag it and move it. Each of these little squares is its own image. Once you finish with that, then we're going to work on it as a text, okay? And we'll put them in the correct order. So let's start with this one though. First, reread the story if you need to. Okay, this is just in English. All right, so you can reread it to get familiar with it a little bit. And then take some time to go ahead and move these around so that they're in the right order. All right, so some folks have already finished really, really fast. Great. If you're not finished, that's okay. Keep working on that. But now that we've looked at that, now that we've reorganized the images and you've kind of refreshed your memory, let's try putting the different sentences in the right order. So you're looking at slide 13, okay? And you've got numbers and you've got these different words. Maybe you know what these words mean, maybe you don't. But you've got these, and these are images, and you're gonna drag the image over to go in the right place. All right, so here, if this was the first one, awesome. You wanna put it there. It's not the first one, that's not it, okay? And then you wanna put the second one there, all right? And so you'll put them in order. All right, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so take a little bit of time to do that. If you finished early, I saw one person finished early, start thinking about what these different words might mean and try to guess what these words might mean. And you can put them up here in your vocab. Okay, put them up here in your vocabulary. You could put some of those expressions that we talked about, some of the words you learned from those expressions up here in the vocabulary, other things like that, okay? So if you finish early, go ahead and put those words in the vocab and try to understand what they mean in English. Okay, bon travail, excellent. So some of y'all were getting some really good guesses in the chat for what these words mean. Good job, bon travail, bon travail. So tomorrow we'll put these in the right order and we'll go over that and we'll be able to tell the story in French, okay? Yeah, go ahead and request the e-pass before you go. It's an automatic going. Oh, someone knocked. Okay, okay. Let me pause the recording real quick. All right. Okay. So tomorrow we'll go through these, all right? Where I'll help you put them in the right order and you'll be able to tell the story in French. I hope what you're doing is you're taking these words, right? Some of these words, and maybe some of the words from here, and you're putting them up in your vocabulary bank, up on slide 3. All right, you want to keep adding to that little by little. And maybe you're also picking up on slide 4, oh, I'm starting to see this one, and I kind of understand what that means in English. So you can fill in that blank over here in English for what that means. J'ai vu. Je suis allé. Tu es allé. Okay. So tomorrow we'll talk about la tortue et le lièvre et la tortue, the story. We'll learn how to tell the story in French. You can tell the story to your parents maybe in French. And we'll talk about these words and we'll keep breaking down kind of the idea of how the passé composé works. All right. I wanted to take a moment too. This weekend, I sent you all a message to please catch up with work. I saw that y'all turned in some assignments. I know that some folks are missing some pretty big assignments. So I'll be doing some grading tonight. I noticed already some people have turned some stuff in. This weekend, if you didn't take advantage of that time to catch up a little bit with the asynchronous lesson, definitely get those assignments in so that you can finish Q3 strong. Because the quarter is ending soon. All right. So next week is spring break. It's not going to be the same kind of spring break that we're used to. You know, I don't know if any of you are going to Cancun or any of that wild stuff. I know I'm not. But we'll have a little break. And I know I need the break. Ms. Punzel needs the break. We all need the break. I'm sure you all do too. A little breather. But then this week is kind of our last big week. We'll complete some activities in your Unit 4 activities packet like we did just now. So if you're following along in class and you're doing the work in class, you won't have as much to do because you'll have completed it in class. We'll also begin a reading assignment, En Vacances 5. And I'm excited for that one. I'm excited to see how it goes. It's a much bigger reading than you've probably ever done in French. And you can do it, but I'm gonna lead y'all through it. But then next week will be spring break. After spring break, we'll have one final week in the quarter. That'll be the last week of the quarter. And then the quarter will be done. So at the end of that week, you'll be turning in this packet and then the reading activity, En Vacances 5. So I just wanted to give you all a quick overview. Okay, this is what's coming. So this week we're working on this stuff. You'll have spring break, time to breathe, and then we'll come back after spring break and we'll finish up the quarter. All right. Donc pour demain, complète l'activité le lièvre et la tortue. So for tomorrow, if you did not complete this in class, go ahead and complete this where you're dragging the different yellow boxes into the right order to tell the story. All right. So at this point, we're going to go into Wildcats Advisory. I'll go ahead and stop recording and I'll invite y'all to ask some questions. So for the recording, I'll say au revoir.